Running the floor, Embiid stuffs it.
Harden for three. James Harden with his second triple.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap Podcast. PSM is in full swing now. We basically got everything kind of moving here. So you're seeing a little bit less of Sean and I every week, but a little bit more of everybody else. So as we get things figured out, make sure you're checking out the rest of the channels on Pick Swap Media. And it is me with my host here, Sean Bernard. Sean, how you doing, brother?
Pretty good. You know, it's NBA Finals coming, draft season. It's like my Christmas coming up, so I'm getting excited for everything. We're gonna get more into that next time, but I've been deep in my research all day, and even with the Sixers offseason, there's something nice about the offseason in terms of just having a little bit of a clean slate, looking at everything. So I'm in a good mental space right now.
Yeah, I think we both are. I think we both
Yeah.
kind of turned a corner over the last week or so. But yeah, I feel like the farther removed from this season we're getting, the more it feels like it's not that bad, and that there are ways out of this, and there's ways for the Sixers to improve coming up. So I feel like a little bit better. We're coming in on an exciting time of the year with the draft, but we're also in the middle of the most exciting part of the year, which is the NBA Finals, which is a tied series 1-1. The Celtics surprisingly took game one. I feel like I was surprised.
Yeah.
And then the Warriors came back and kind of, beat them up a little bit last night in game two. What are you seeing from that series right now?
Yeah, game one, I was very impressed with the Celtics in terms of that fourth quarter, just flipping a switch that the Warriors didn't have, up in the defensive intensity, being physical, using their length. They outscored them 40-16 in the fourth quarter, which was absolutely absurd. And just did not, they went from the Warriors leading 12 heading into just blowing them out of the water. So just a dominant performance there. I was very impressed. I mean, you knew Golden State wasn't going down 0-2, so not a surprise to see them bounce back last night. It was an interesting game. I mean, Draymond's out there just playing full football, and he really does have like the most lenient technical whistle in the entire NBA, and pretty crazy what he gets away with. But at the same time, it's like the Warriors do need that, and he is a valuable part of their team, and he talks all about setting the energy. So it worked for him. I mean, Steph Curry is still Steph Curry. Terrific game last night. Jordan Poole obviously popped off. Klay Thompson is not doing a lot, but I don't know. They're still the Warriors. It's going to be a heavyweight series. I think this one is going the distance for sure.
That would be fun. I think that's kind of what we're all hoping for. It feels like a little bit of like a dystopian NBA Finals, like kind of a lack of interest. I'm over the Warriors type of Western Conference. I feel like a lot of people, outside of the Warriors bubble are not rooting for them. And then, for us, obviously seeing the Celtics in the finals is sickening as is, but the thought of them winning is even more so. So it's been like, I mean, obviously we're rooting for the Warriors. I'm rooting for the Warriors, every night, but it's like, it's a weird feeling because I'm kind of just like out of it. I kind of just don't feel like I care enough like about the series because I don't feel like I want to see either of them win. Like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yeah, no, I got you. I do feel like I hate this Celtics team less than like a typical Celtics team to some extent. Like, I mean, obviously they have
they
some guys.
didn't beat the Sixers, and I feel like that's why.
Yeah, I think that helps for sure. And just like Jaylen Brown, I like. They have Grant Williams, I love. Robert Williams. They have some guys that I do genuinely like. A lot of cool players on the roster. And then for the Warriors perspective, I honestly am rooting for the Warriors pretty hard, just in regards to like, I know everybody's like sick of them winning, but I think they get a bad rap because of the whole Kevin Durant situation. Like, I think that devalues like the championship they won before and what a great team they were before Kevin Durant. And I think this would kind of be like a solidifying ring for them in terms of legacy. When you talk about Steph Curry and all this, like, they really were a legitimate top tier team prior to Kevin Durant, and that should not get lost in kind of all the translation. And I think like it kind of does sometimes because of obviously Kevin Durant is who he is, but like it would be nice for them to win another one without him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying I want them, like, I don't know. Steph Curry having 4 rings, like, to me feels wrong. I don't know. I mean, you've seen a lot of good things from them, like a bounce back game after game one. But like, the Celtics, and Draymond said this after game one, like basically saying Smart and Al Horford combined for 44 points. And then last night they combined for 4. So it was like those are the games that happen. They got punched in the mouth. They had a couple extra days off. I do agree with you though. This Boston team is like weirdly less hateable than normal.
Yeah.
I think let me get your take on this because I've been seeing this a little bit all over like the Jason Tatum and like Kobe things. Is that corny?
Yeah. Yeah, is
I
my
think it
kind
is.
of
Like it was like okay for a little bit, right? Like the first or second time, it was like, all right, that's whatever. But
Did you
to like
see
text his number and then like
the profile pic today?
yeah, the profile
Yeah.
picture, like people saying, and I don't know if this is true, but like the shirt and shorts that he wore like to their practice yesterday was like apparently exactly the same thing that Kobe worked out in when he worked out for the Celtics before the draft. Like, okay, like we get it, dude. Like, I always
Yeah.
just get a kick out of the fact that people like praise Kobe fans as if like 80% of the people under the age of 40 were like massive Kobe fans. So like,
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, Tatum's definitely a Kobe guy, has talked about it openly throughout. I do think it's like he's certainly like doubling and tripling down on all of it. But
Doing
I
too
don't know.
much.
You do it, yeah, doing too much, but you do what you got to do. Whatever helps you motivated, I guess. But I don't know. He bounced back last night as well. After I don't even want to say a bad game one because he's definitely impacted the game in a ton of ways. I think he had 13 assists and a complete game. I thought he had a much better game last night, even though the plus minus he had the minus 36, which is the worst in NBA history in a finals game, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But I really didn't think he played that bad, and I'll give him props for it.
Yeah, he's been incredible this postseason. He's got a lot of names on the list now that he's beaten in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So he's kind of racking that up as well. Obviously, with nothing without Jaylen Brown and the rest of them. Like that team is. I enjoy their style of play as well. I
Yeah.
feel like defensive wise, seeing what they've been able to do and like making that their bread and butter is just something that I don't know if any of us really expected them to like hunker down as a really strong unit defensively. But that's what they've done, and they've turned into like an incredible defensive team. Shout out Ime Udoka, who was in the building just a few short years ago. So let's move on here. Enough about the Celtics and more about the Sixers. So we're going to talk a lot about some free agency options today. Sean, you have a good list of 10 to 12 names. But first, we got to talk about the salary cap situation. So, reel us all in here.
Yeah, so obviously the biggest card that still has to fall with this is James Harden and whatever the contract shakes out to there. That's kind of the biggest factor. The NBA salary cap is projected to be set at 122 million for next year, and the luxury tax kicking in at 149 million. If the Sixers add the 23rd pick, they will get the full $10.3 million non-tax mid-level exception, $4.1 billion biannual exception, which would bring them up to 113 million with 14 players on roster. If the Harden opts in, they would lose some of that, which is kind of the big deal and why they want a cheaper deal, basically, because you would go over that luxury tax line, which would shift the non-tax mid-level exception down to like $6 million. And just a couple alterations there. I'm trying my best to dive into this stuff. It really is very complicated, but essentially the Sixers have a little bit of money to play with, but are pretty strapped against the cap. So more or less, once Harden, whatever that contract comes in at is kind of the biggest factor, and we'll see where things shake out from there. But the bottom line is that they have more to play with than I kind of expected, I guess.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is it's likely that they make that 23rd pick in order to increase the mid-level exception. So
yeah, I think the idea of trading it for a veteran, it doesn't work well in terms of cap, basically, is like
right.
Because of obviously how the thing that gets devalued with draft picks is obviously when you draft a player, you're thinking about like their long-term and potential and everything that comes with like what that player can be. But it's also, you have like a cost controlled player for multiple years. And like we're talking about Tyrese Maxey, who's obviously still on his rookie deal. You're getting like $20 million of production for like a $3 million cap hit, which is crazy. And I think I forget what his exact cap hit is, but basically that's what I'm saying is like it's you are getting that for that many controlled years. You have that player, which is like a major asset in long term, and that's kind of why it's important to hit on rookies and guys that can contribute like that.
Yeah, and when you look at the teams around the league, and like this is coming from me, who I've kind of been like in the camp of I don't mind if they trade it and move to go get a guy that can contribute right away. Understanding now that there is a big difference between the mid-level exception, which they will likely use in the free agency because it's a lot of money that they can allocate, that's basically granted to them. But now, like when you look at it, okay, there's an increase in that salary. That's where your veteran player is going to go. And there's a big difference between 6 and 10 million. So like
Yeah.
knocking it down. So that's going to be important. Keep that in note. Going into this draft, I think a lot of people out there are thinking that the Sixers are going to trade this pick. But it seems like with that aspect, keep that in mind because they'll probably end up making that pick, which, we're going to talk a lot about that later on. Maybe next week. We'll dive into that a little bit. So to move into these free agents, what's like before we go into name by name, what have you looked at to kind of compile this list? Is it athletic wings? Like what did you base this off as, or is it just best available players out there for a good price?
Yeah, I got a couple different positions in here, a little bit of everything. Essentially, like I weeded out the guys that I think are going to be out of their price range completely.
Right.
This is more of kind of the bargain bin options, but all guys that I think would be guys that would make a difference and would be play some significant minutes on the Sixers team right away is pretty much what this list is. So
Okay.
I'll go down kind of one by one. Just give me your level of interest, 1 to 10. We'll talk a little bit about each guy. All right, so to jump right in, I'm starting out with is Bruce Brown. Last year, he averaged 9 points a game, 4.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 1.1 steals, 0.7 blocks. Listed at 6'4", he shot 40% from 3 last year on 1.3 attempts per game. You know what Bruce Brown brings. A guy that I personally like. What are your thoughts on Bruce Brown?
So this is really contingent on whether or not Thybulle's here.
Mm-hmm.
If Thybulle's on this roster, I don't think you can have a space for another guy that plays a similar role as Bruce Brown. Thibault out of the picture, I would say my interest is probably like 8, pretty high. I like Bruce Brown's game a lot. I like that he's, connected to James Harden, and they've shown that they can play really well. It also gives them a really interesting aspect, making their offense really diverse in the way that they can take and beat off the floor and do interesting things with Brown in the pick and roll as a cutter, as kind of a pseudo big man, a guy that can play a small ball 4, and he's even played the small ball 5 at times. So I like that aspect of it. Defensively, he makes up for whatever you're losing with Thibault, and gives you a really strong defensive perimeter presence as well. So I like Brown a lot.
Yeah. I'd probably put him at a 6 in my mind. It's a great point about Thibault in terms of how that affects roster construction, and they obviously overlap in some of what they do. I like Bruce Brown a lot. I think it would bring a very interesting aspect of versatility in this roster in a way that they don't have right now. And that flexibility with different lineups, with being able to go small. He's like a scrappy little tenacious guy. I love the way he competes. He just gets in the mix. He plays so much bigger than his size, and really a guy who just reinvented himself and found a way to stick in this league, which I respect a ton. Does his job, obviously has that relationship with Harden, like you said, and I think he would be welcomed in Philly and fit very nicely.
Yeah, I think to point out as well, like the fit in Philly, I think is perfect.
Yeah.
The city would love him. He's one of the guys, hard hat kind of guy. You've also seen, and the Sixers have seen this firsthand, one too many times. He is the type of player that like swings a ball game. The defensive plays that he makes, it's kind of, I guess it's a little bit similar to Thibault in the way that like he's a spark plug defensively. He's that type of guy, and when he scores, it gives the team such a like boost because he's not an offensive caliber, like a locked in offensive guy. But I don't know. I like his fit here. Obviously, whether or not Thybulle's here is the question.
Yeah, totally agree. The next guy I want to jump into, I think the Sixers will probably be priced out of this guy because I think he's going to have a ton of interest across the league. But Tyus Jones, he backup point guard for the Memphis Grizzlies last year, super valuable role, and obviously that incredibly impressive record without John Morant. Averaged 8.7 points per game, 4.4 assists, 2.4 rebounds, and shot 39% from 3 on 2.8 attempts per game this year. Thoughts on Tyus?
Yeah, I like him a lot too. I like the theme you're going with here a little bit. A grittier guy, the dirty work kind of guy, and a great backup point guard. He's one of those guys. And you point out last year what the Grizzlies were able to do without John Morant. Take over, coach on the floor type of guy, great leader, and just like a really quality defender, offensive player. He makes the right play, smart point guard, great backup. I don't know. I like Tyus a lot. I guess I would, again, what do you think he's going to get? If you think he's priced out of the Sixers range, what do you think he's going to get?
I don't know. I think he's probably regarded as the best backup point guard in the league right now. I think there's a team that would probably willing to give him like low end starter money. Probably, I could even. I think there's a chance he gets above the $10 million range, which I don't. I think Tyus is in an interesting spot right now where he looks amazing in the role that he's in, and I think in a more expanded role that we could see some more weaknesses that he's able to hide right now. But he is a very heady guy, a very smart player. decent shooter, and a guy that has a knack for kind of coming up clutch in the right times too. So I could see a team taking a chance on him for maybe more than he ends up being worth, but I don't know. He's a guy that I'm kind of unsure what the market exactly will be.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if he's at 10, like if you think that's the market for him, are you using that MLE on him or no?
Probably not. I probably would rather space that out. I do think it's important for the Sixers to add a backup point guard. I think they've lacked that. I think the George Hill trade, the idea behind that, I absolutely loved. Obviously, it did not work out with George Hill. Just did not really play well and just did not click with it. But that concept of having a guy that's like a veteran point guard, a guy that can come in, run a second unit, I think is very valuable and would be a great addition to this team. So that kind of category of player is something I would love. Tyus Jones might be a step above in pedigree above what the Sixers are looking for that, but that's pretty high on my checklist this offseason.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think it's something they've lacked, and there was the idea of that being Maxi, but he's clearly outgrown that idea very
Yeah.
so quickly that and we see that he's not a point guard necessarily. And from a guy that like the backup point guard position is a guy that you want to have the ball in his hand, be a distributor, be a coach on the floor, handle business the way that, you see Tyus Jones and a bunch of other guys in that spot do. So I would definitely be intrigued by him. I wonder what, the flyer is on him at this point.
Yeah, yeah, be interesting to see. To move on to the next guy, Otto Porter, 8.2 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.1 steals, shot 37% from three on 3.4 attempts per game, and obviously we can still see what he's doing in the finals right now. Pretty relatively important rotational piece for this Warriors team. What are your thoughts on Otto?
Yeah, I like Otto as well. I feel like I'm probably going to start off every guy like this.
Mhm.
But he fits the bill of a guy that the Sixers need. Lengthy wing, good defender, can space the floor, can get his own shot at times. Like off the bench, you gotta love a guy like Otto Porter because he's just gonna give you. And again, I think these are the type of guys, and I'm really enjoying the list that you've made up so far because it's just guys that are solid.
Yeah,
The guys that are gonna do a good job every single night. Obviously Otto Porter's gonna have an off shooting night, but he's still gonna do the little things that he does. He's still going to play good defense. He's still going to be an athletic wing, switchable, like
yeah.
just guys that the Sixers do not have. So again, they're probably going to have to like. What do you think? His price has gone back up. He's had a roller coaster, a little bit of a career. He's gone up and down at places, but again, having a really good year on a championship caliber team, that price is going to shoot up a little bit as well. So I'm interested what he will go for as well.
Yeah, he has had an interesting career. Former third overall pick, a guy that has reinvented himself really with this Warriors team, and I think it's cool guys that kind of accept their downfall a little bit and just become a master in a smaller role. I think that's super cool to watch. We're seeing a similar kind of theme with Andrew Wiggins with Golden State,
Mhm.
but for Otto Porter specifically, like this, he's guy that's the highest on my list as far as Sixers interest so far. I'd probably mark him at an 8. Just being switchable, a guy that can defend, is confident in shooting 3-pointers. Uh, I think he just checks a lot of boxes that the Sixers need, and it's just like you said, he's just solid. He's just gonna do his job, do his thing, and I think that wing position is still by far the biggest need. I think that's pretty obvious on the roster construction. There's a lot of ways that they can go about attacking it, but I think getting a guy on a minimum, which is what he's playing for this year, I think in that range would be terrific. And like you said, he probably bumped up his value this year, probably for sure did. So it'll be interesting to see how much that increases. But if you had a chance at Otto Porter, I think you do it.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, we're talking about he's a guy that can slide in and out of the starting lineup, can give you nights. He can play a 3 or a 4. Like we're talking about a mold of player that the Sixers just do not have.
Yeah.
So I like that idea for him.
Yeah, and another guy that fits the mold quite well, and a guy that we've talked about a lot, PJ Tucker. First off, I found out PJ stands for Pops Jr. today, which I had no idea.
Yeah.
But for PJ specifically, averaged 7.6 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 2.1 assists, shot 41.5% from three. Another guy, 6'5", but plays way bigger than his size. Pat Riley, who had quite the press conference today, spoke
Yeah.
about how he sees PJ as a long-term part of the future of the franchise. I don't know if he's going anywhere, but would you have interest in PJ Tucker if he was to hypothetically be an option?
Yeah, I absolutely would. Shout out Kevin McCormick. He's been knocking on PJ Tucker's door for the last like 3 years. But yeah, man, he's again a great relationship with James Harden, Daryl Morey as well. So, there's that connection. So you wonder what's going through his mind. But again, a leader, vocal leader. He's the type of guy that the Sixers are missing. He's going to yell at people. He's going to ruffle some feathers. He's going to do what he's got to do. Maybe he'll even yell at Doc. I don't know. But, again, a guy that can slide in and out of the starting lineup has done both, has come off the bench, has, been a starter on championship caliber teams. We're looking at him with the Heat this year. He was a major part of their run this year, again, with the Rockets as well, and just all the years before Milwaukee. So, defensively, he's going to give you a lot. He was guarding James Harden in that series, so he can guard point guards, body up against those guys. He can play big. Again, another guy that can play the small ball five, and spreads the floor. I don't know. He's exactly what the Sixers need. I think if you're going to overspend on a guy, PJ Tucker might be the guy to overspend on.
Yeah, and I think he's a likely guy that Morey would be willing to, like you said, because of the history. Obviously, he was a guy that played the small ball center for the Rockets, who is a prime version of that center around James Harden model of play, a guy that's perfectly content sitting in the corner, just shooting corner threes. I feel like I've never seen him miss a corner three. And we talk so much about the Sixers needing a dog. That's pretty much the definition of what PJ Tucker is. And get in your face, competes his heart out. He's getting old. That part worries me a little bit because he's a guy that looks old out there. When I was going down this list and looking at ages, Wes Matthews is a guy we're going to talk about in a little bit. Him being the same age as PJ Tucker, I would have guessed PJ Tucker was 5 years older. So that part does worry me a little bit. I don't know why, if his name is Pops Jr., why does he not go by Pops Tucker? Because that's so much cooler in my mind.
I mean, I think it's actually just because I forget the story exactly, but it was actually because he was exactly like his granddad or something like that. So I don't remember.
Yeah. Either way, we'll move on. Another guy on my list, Kyle Anderson. 7.6 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 33% three-point shooter. What do you think of Kyle Anderson?
I love slow-mo.
Really?
He's a Bruin. That's my dog. That is my dog. I am so happy you brought him up. I've been calling for Kyle Anderson for a while now. I love that guy. I think he's fantastic. A Greg Popovich disciple. So, he's going to bring that type of energy. He's an interesting player, and he can do a lot. He's played guard. I think he came into the league, and they considered him a point guard. I think he played, kind of a combo guard at UCLA. He's now obviously transitioned into being a full three. The shooting form is concerning. I don't know what it is. It's slow. It's weird, but I love the way he plays basketball. He's a good creator. Secondary creator. I like Kyle Anderson a lot.
Yeah, this is probably the guy I have the least amount of interest in on this list. I'm not even gonna lie.
I'm definitely biased, but I love him.
He might not only be the slowest basketball player in the NBA, but he might be the slowest human being in the world. Just the rate he goes about things, it takes him days to drive the paint. And I mean, the production is there from a fit aspect, I can see it, but there's something just I'm normally weird players, I like an interesting style like that, but it just doesn't quite do it for me. When we talk about the lack of athleticism on this roster, and I don't think he's an unathletic guy, but the way he kind of goes about it, it just looks unathletic and just is not visually appealing in a way that I just don't think I'm on board with.
You don't use the word explosive when talking about Kyle Anderson. So I get you there. But you do use smart, high IQ player, making the right play. Good handle, even though it's slow. It is good. Secondary creator. I love the way that he's able to match up with other guards and playmakers, and he fits alongside them. I don't know. I like him coming off the bench, but him and George Niang in the same second unit might be the slowest combo of people in the entire NBA, and I mean that lovingly.
Yeah,
but definitely not up there in the speed category, which is something the Sixers have been lacking. So I understand the lack of interest there.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely an interesting prospect, interesting player there. I'll be curious to see what kind of role he ends up with moving forward. Another guy I want to talk about, Markieff Morris. This is the Morris brother from Miami. Only played 17 games this year, obviously because of the assault by Nikola Jokic, which I try and bring up as often as possible. In those 17 games, he averaged 7.6 points, 2.6 rebounds, 1.4 assists, and shot 33.3% from three on 2.8 3-point attempts per game. What are your thoughts on Morris?
Sure. I think I'm mildly interested, between a 4 and a 5. I think you're bringing him in for culture reasons, for place, not what he's doing on the court. So if you can get him really cheap, sure. Bring him in just to be a guy that's on the bench that's, pushing tempo and changing, the way that this team goes about things, bringing a different type of energy, I'm there for that. I don't really care for him otherwise. I don't know what his career looks like from here. He did not play a lot, even when he came back. So, I mean, obviously, I hope for the best for him. But he's from here. He's kind of been like hinting at stuff on Twitter. I've seen
Yeah.
a little bit, and a reunion seems like it could happen. And I'm all for that type of energy being brought to this team. I think it's necessary. And if it's a Mike Scott type role, as long as he's cheaper than what Mike Scott was making, I'm okay with that. So if he's cheap, bring him here. But if he costs, if he's making up more than $2 million a year, like I'm good.
Yeah, I like his brother a whole lot more than I like him. I think Marcus Morris is
Yeah.
a very impressive, would be a terrific addition. Markieff,
Yeah.
he's fine. Like kind of what you said, like it's more of like an attitude, leadership, just locker room kind of guy. But I think he could be like a perfect kind of Mike Scott kind of guy in terms of like
Yeah.
he has the toughness, like you said, a Philly guy. He could bring a little bit, and there is like an aspect of a like he didn't play a lot last year. I have a hard time judging off last year, but I think that could also be like looked at positively in terms of like a let's get him for a cheaper contract. Let's give him a clean slate. He might be able to outperform what we just saw, and I do think there's reason to believe that he could bring something to this team.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's why I'm like, okay, if the price range is reasonable, you can get him and bring him in. I think he will give you, there's a lot there for him to give you, personality wise, what he is on and off the court. But like, I just don't want to have to, like, I don't think this is a weird way to put it, I feel like, but I don't want to pay, like, I don't want the Sixers to use as much money on him as he's probably worth. I would, like, if they're going to get him, I'd rather, like, get him on a cheaper deal because I don't know. There's bigger fish to fry with this Sixers offseason.
Yeah, I think it's pretty likely he's a minimum guy at this point in his career, which veteran minimum, I don't even know what it's set at this year, 1.9, 2.1,
Yeah.
somewhere around there, which for that price, like I'm cool with bringing him on.
Yep.
So I'd be down with that.
His position is also already taken. Like the backup power forward is handled at this point, really.
Yeah, I do think he brings a different aspect of it. Like you're talking about Niang, right?
Yeah.
I think Morris is more capable of being like a small ball five, which Niang isn't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think Morris also brings like obviously like Niang can space the floor, but I think Morris has a little bit like more to him in terms of like he can play out of the post a little bit. He's comfortable sitting outside. Like I do think there would be aspects of versatility with the offense that like Niang, as much as I love him and as great as he is in his role, like there's certainly limitations to his game that I don't feel the same way about Morris. To get back to a big man here, Andre Drummond. How would you feel about the return of Andre Drummond?
10. I love it. It seems likely, doesn't it?
I don't know. I think
it seems a little bit likely.
You saw we put out on Twitter his post about like I'm the best to ever do it with a bunch of 6-year stats and that kind of thing. I think his mindset like going into this year was that like he took the minimum obviously last year. He wanted to perform his value or up his value and perform and get that long-term deal, get that big contract after. I think he liked being in Philly. Obviously the trade was a weird aspect thrown into things. I think going in, he planned for purely looking for a heavy deal after this offseason, but I do think he liked Philly. So I think there's a chance he could want to be back.
Yeah, it feels like there's a little bit of that. I don't know because so like I feel like all right, if you're doing that, then you're using like somebody else. I guess I mean it's tough. You still have Reed. You're figuring out what he is. You're trying to. I hope at this point you're trying to improve on what Charles Bassey is, but like it's just tough right now because do you trust Andre Drummond in the playoffs more than you trust one of Paul Reed or Charles Bassey? You're kind of playing for that range now, right? So like I don't know. Drummond was a fantastic backup. He would fit nicely next to James Harden. He does what Harden would, need him to do as a backup. He's a much better in-place starter than the other guys that had to play in the playoffs. So I don't know. I think again, if he's cheap, which if he's going into this offseason thinking I'm getting a starter, like starter's money, and I'm playing somewhere as a starter, then by all means go ahead, go get your money and play somewhere else. But like you're not going to win a championship if he's a starter.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm probably at like a 2 or a 3 on Andre Drummond coming back, and kind of what you said about like obviously with Paul Reed and Charles Bassey, and like there's an aspect of me that it's like I like remembering Andre Drummond positively. Like I'm cool with like we had the Andre Drummond experience that I'm happy he was here. He did his thing. He got out in time. Like I think there's an aspect of if he's around too long, like the tables might turn a little bit on kind of the feeling on him. And we didn't get to see him in the playoffs. He was not particularly good with Brooklyn. His rebounding numbers were down. He was exposed a little bit defensively. And those are all like concerns I have. And the prime thing I'm looking for in a backup center minutes, because you just have to survive those minutes basically. And that's been like why I've been hammering the Paul Reed table for so long. So I think we continue with kind of what we got, keep the young guys a chance. And I'm cool with letting the Andre Drummond experience end how it did.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't know. I was joking with the 10. I don't actually need Andre Drummond that bad. But I don't know. There are things that he did well. I think about the way that the Sixers had to deal with DeAndre Jordan as their backup center, and the games that he had to play in and the out rebounding in the playoffs that happened. I'm like, that does get shored up with Andre Drummond for the most part. But again, I think it is a good point that like the same thing happened with Dwight Howard. Everyone was like, we love Dwight. He's awesome. He's fun. And then the playoffs came around. It was like, holy shit, this guy cannot play.
Yeah, exactly.
He needs to not see the floor. So that is a good point, and maybe that's the right way to go. I think there is kind of like there has to be a cutoff point here soon of like shit or get off the pot with these young guys. They're taking up a lot of roster space here with guys that are just not even seeing the floor, and maybe that's a change that needs to be made as a coaching staff because there is reluctance to play these guys from the head coach. We've seen that time and time again. So maybe that's the problem. I don't know. Conversation for another day, but yeah.
To move on from the center position, two guys, we'll kind of lump these together, but the Martin brothers, Cody and Caleb Martin. Cody, of course, played for Charlotte, Caleb for Miami. Pretty similar stat lines. Cody averaged 7.7 points, 2.5 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.2 steals, shot 38.4% from three. Caleb was 9.2 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 1 steal, and was 41.3% from three. So do you want either Martin, one Martin, or no Martins?
Maybe one Martin. Yeah, I think again we're talking about guys that play a good role off the bench, solid wing defenders, good shooters, guys that can play in the playoffs and kind of just plug and play, right? You have a lineup with them, you can put them here or there or there or there, and they're gonna fit in, they're gonna play that role. So I like that idea. I don't particularly like either of them.
Really?
Not a fan of. I don't know. I don't know why I don't like them. Like
These
were like not factors in college. Like
they were my guys in college from Nevada.
Yeah,
I love them in college.
I just didn't. I've been kind of just on them, but
No.
they honestly were much better in the league than I thought they were going to be. I was surprised that they are able to make careers for themselves, but they did, and they've been very good. And again, athletic. Guys that can get above the rim, which is nice. The Sixers don't have too many of those guys, which is an insane thing to say for an NBA basketball team. So again, I like the idea. I like the archetype of player that you're talking about here. So if either Martin is on the Sixers next year, I won't be upset by any means. I like what they bring. Again, it probably just accords to price at this point.
Yeah. Personally, I'm a fan of both of them. I like them from Nevada. I like them. They were guys of mine coming out of college and have kind of proved themselves fairly well so far in the league. One of them played for the minimum this year. One was slightly over, but under $3 million a year. Both pretty affordable contracts. If it's the same price range, I'm cool with either one.
Yep.
I do think they fit. I mean, I think they're a pretty great rotational wing piece in the NBA. Just do their job. They have a splash of athleticism to them. They bring it to guys that I like. So personally, these are pretty close to the top of my list. I'll probably go 7 for both these. I'll probably go 7 for both these. I think I like Caleb slightly more than Cody, but they're pretty interchangeable.
How tall are they?
I believe like in the 6'7" range. I'm gonna look it up as we're talking. But
yeah, I was gonna say because I feel like, I mean, 2 or 3, they can definitely play the 3.
Yeah,
I'm just kind of thinking of like fit 6'5". So
Caleb's listed at 6'5", Cody at 6'6", which doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but one of those has got to be accurate.
Yeah. All right. Well, 6'5", 6'6", we can deal with that. That's I guess ideally a 2, but 2 or 3 they can make it work.
Yeah. Another guy I want to talk about, DJ Augustine, 34 years old, 9.5 points per game. This is career stats: 9.5 points per game, 3.9 assists, 1.8 rebounds, 38.1% 3-point shooter. Do you like DJ?
No, I've got nothing for DJ Augustine.
No.
He's a classic almost Sixer. I feel
Yeah,
like every trade deadline for the last 4 years has been like, let's go get DJ Augustine.
yeah,
Uh, and then he's a guy that goes somewhere else, and you're like, damn it, they got DJ Augustine. And then it just doesn't matter because he's DJ Augustine. So like it actually doesn't matter. But I don't know, man. He's a guy I like convinced myself I liked a few times. And maybe 4 years ago I would have been like, yeah, let's go get him. But small defensive liability, a guy that literally gets hunted every single possession defensively when you watch, especially in the playoffs. We've seen that. A vet, so I get it. Good, like a backup point guard veteran. That's all good with me. He'll win you a game, and you'll love DJ Augustine for like a week probably. Feels like Trey Burkish to me though. But I don't know. I'm good on DJ Augustine personally.
yeah. I've personally written probably 3 or 4 articles about trading for DJ
Yeah.
Augustine, so I'm with you on that. I mean, he's a guy I feel like you said, like every trade deadline has been a target and almost coming here. The George Hill, when we got George Hill, I remember specifically like banging the table saying how DJ Augustine needs to be the trade, and we kind of got a DJ Augustine light, if you even want to call George Hill that, but I don't even know. I don't even know who's done dirtier in that comp there, but uh, Augustine, he's 5'11", a little bit undersized. I like the aspect of like a guy who's been around. No, like there hasn't been like an NBA situation that he's not familiar with at this point. He's been everywhere, done everything. So I would like having around more of a regular season edition than a playoff edition, which I think is something that does need to be kept in mind when you're building it. But I put my level of interest at like a 5 for DJ Augustine.
Cool.
Another guy I want to talk about, Wesley Matthews, 5.1 points per game, 1.9 rebounds, 0.7 assists, shot 33.8% from 3 on 3.2 3-point attempts a game, 35 years old. What do you think of Wes Matthews?
The 3-point percentage was a bit lower than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, it's like I've never seen Wesley Matthews miss. So I'm like, of course, he probably shoots 50%, but I like him defensively.
Yeah.
I think it was Jackson Frank that put out a little thread of him, Wesley Matthews, defensively, and from clips from this season, and just very, very solid.
Yeah.
Did a lot perimeter wise, a lot on the smaller guards, which like I really like having that idea. Because as good as Matisse is defensively, we talk about this all the time. Like Matthews is more of like a dog, like get in your face, take up your space, make you uncomfortable all the time. And just muscle you. I like that type of defender. The Sixers do not have one of those guys. And off the bench, he's again another plug and play wing guy. Can space the floor. I kind of expected him to be, like I said, a little bit higher on the 3-point percentage. But when you got gravity like Joel Embiid and you got the passing ability like Harden, I like the idea that his will probably go up a little bit and can come off the bench, comfortable doing both. He's done both in his career, so I like that addition. Wesley Matthews again, and I don't think he'll be very expensive.
Yeah, I would throw Wes Matthews at a 9 in my mind. I think
Yeah.
he would be a pretty seamless fit on the Sixers team. Like you said, he's a guy that gets in your grill. He's not afraid to chase guy around screens, do whatever it takes to get through and stick with the guy. Just like a hard-nosed player, a guy that competes, does his job extremely well. I would love him on the Sixers. And like you kind of said about Matisse, like Matisse obviously makes these eye-popping, like athletic plays and the blocks and steals, but he never is like a guy to like bully an opponent and like physically impose himself upon a guy. And that's what I like about Wesley Matthews. And I do think he would be like a terrific just addition to this Sixers team. So for me, he's pretty much right up there. Probably my top guy on across that we've talked about.
It's another thing, like just rounding out this team. I feel like that's a guy. Like when you're thinking about reconstructing this roster, and a guy that need like a pillar of your team is that really strong defensive 3-and-D player off the bench. Like that's Wesley Matthews. So I like him there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the list of guys I got. One other guy I'll give a shout out to is Trevlin Queen, which I know he was a G League standout for the Rockets franchise this year. A guy that I really like and would love if he's just floating out there to give a little minimum deal to. A guy that like will pick up multiple technical fouls, get in a guy's face, and he can hoop. So if there's like an open roster spot, we're just looking for somebody, give Trevlin Queen a chance. I don't expect to have a long discussion on him, but that's one of my guys that I would love to see come in here.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting maneuvers here. I mean, that's what makes or breaks a championship team, really, is those kind of understated guys that can make, a difference, whether it's late in the regular season or early, like in the playoffs. Obviously, when it comes down to this time of the year, it's the guys are being the guys. But, throughout a season, I feel like those kind of under the radar guys make a huge difference. And this is going to be a huge offseason for the Sixers. They're going to probably make at least one or two of those deals with some of the free agents that we talked about, maybe some other people. There's potentially a trade. I think my last question for you is, and this is something I've went back and forth about, especially since the Doc presser, and Jaden Springer. What do you think for him this year? Like, does he have a role on this team? Because when you talk about defensive minded, a guy that is apparently from really what we've heard, we haven't seen too much, but is like a bulldog defensively, will get in your face, will take up your space and muscle you. He's built like a running back. So just what do you envision for him? Do you have any idea that he'll be kind of part of this rotation during the season?
I sure hope so. I think he deserves a chance. I'm less confident that he actually gets it with Doc pulling the strings and making the calls. I mean, his skill set. I'm a big time believer in Jaden Springer long term. Like he's progressed quicker than I expected to. Like just looking at him, watching him a little bit with the Blue Coats, like he's added to his bag in terms of like he's got a nice little pull up. He likes operating kind of around the free throw line and the elbows. He's got a couple nice shots in there. His shooting forms improved a ton. He was a little rigid coming out of college, and it looks much better after a year of professional basketball. Uh, he deserves a chance. Like at the minimum, we should be able to walk out of here after the season and like have an idea how far off it is or if he's ready. He's still 19 years old and still pretty freshly 19, so he's pretty much like younger or the same age as a lot of the rookies going into this draft, which is something to keep in mind. But I like Jaden Springer a ton. I hope he gets some run. His defense is NBA ready. His offense has not been. If he's going to take a leap, and I know he's been working, I saw a couple clips of him working with a trainer already this offseason on some like off motion ball, catch and shoot, those kind of things. If he can get those down, like he absolutely deserves a spot in the rotation. So I would love to see him.
Yeah, I think it's important for him to at least get some regular season minutes and hopefully early on, but to get the ability, the chance to just play through some of the season, to have, that experience of the ups and downs of a NBA regular season. I think when you're talking about the long-term development of, him as a player, but also this young core, like I think with the way they're strapped for money this offseason, depending obviously with Harden and everything, like I think it's really important for all those guys this season to get a chance to prove themselves as, a player that can play or, one that needs a little bit more time. Because I think that'll change the way the Sixers go about this season. But again, we could talk about that. We got a long time to talk about all these things with the draft upcoming, with free agency upcoming, and the end of the NBA season on the horizon. So, Sean, if you don't have anything else, we can close up shop here.
Yeah, we'll dive into some draft content moving forward. There's a lot of guys around the Sixers 23rd pick that I think fit their needs. A ton of like lengthy athletic wings that are right in that range. So a lot to talk about. EJ Liddell, Jalen Williams, Marshawn Beauchamp. Those are probably three names that have been talked about a lot. We'll dive into a couple other guys going forward, but we'll save that for next time.
Yeah, and that'll be a fun episode. We'll get to pick Sean's draft brain, his favorite time of the year. So that'll be fun for all of us. Until then, you can keep up with us. You can follow Sean at Sean_Bernard1. Follow me at JSBrain17. You can follow the pod at PickSwapPod. You can follow the rest of the media group at PickSwap Media and their various Twitter accounts. Make sure you're checking all of them out. Again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, BetUS, one of the leading sportsbook and casinos in the market. You can use our code PickSwap at logging to get your first bet risk-free up to $500. Check out the YouTube. Get us anywhere you get your podcast, whether it's Apple or Spotify. And until next week, check out Sean's written work all over the place. He's going on 3 different sites now, all over. So just keep up. It's coming at you quick. So until next week, we'll talk to you guys soon.